Voting day number 3, this particular session. So thank you so much for spending your valuable time today here. Observation, the virtual world advantage, but the best of Goa that I can see is behind Dr. Celso only, whereas I would love to come and visit Goa, such a beautiful state, such a beautiful place. But at the same time, it also provides the opportunity for families' finances. Dr. Celso highlighted the importance of both the spouses getting involved in the decisions. Now, let's say you may divide the tasks, and one person may take up the administrative part of filling up the form, or deciding something or stuff like that. But at a strategic level, at a broader level, do both need to be involved or not? And for that, a friend gives a beautiful analogy, and he says that if I'm going in a vehicle, so basically let's assume that this vehicle has it's like a horse cart with 2 wheels. Now just imagine that one wheel is moving faster than the other. What would happen? Well, that a horse cart will definitely meet with an accident. Both the wheels need to move in sync together, and then the journey becomes smooth, enjoyable, and one is able to go distance. The same analogy is applicable when it comes to the family's finances. And if that's the case, should one person handle the money? Should both handle money? Or should we do that task jointly? Now, there are a lot of questions, there are a lot of dilemmas, there are a lot of doubts. What do we do about it? So let me invite Kiran to share a few thoughts on that. Kiran, over to you.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you everyone for being here. So I'll just move on with the session today. See, when we talk about money, there are several important questions that arise. Usually what happens is when it is money, and when you're talking to maybe a financial planner or somebody who's helping you with your investments, it's always about products. But if we look deeper, these are some of the important questions that arise, and we don't really pay attention to these. So for example, you want to buy a house. So where do I get this money for my house? So you would have invested some amount somewhere, and you can pull it out to, fund the down payment and take a loan for the rest. But if you take a loan, will there be an impact on the amount of money that is remaining for other goals? How do you fund your children's education? You have a large EMI going on, and you also dream of sending your children to some prestigious institutes for higher education. So how do you manage that? And in the meantime, if you also have a dream of maybe starting your own venture, getting into entrepreneurship, you will require funding for that as well. So how do you balance this out? So that becomes a critical question. And of course, retirement is there for everybody, whether you are in a job or whether you're running your own business. There will be a point in time where your primary source of income will no longer be there, either because you're retiring from your job or because you are at an age where you would like to take a break from what you're doing. So in that situation, your investments are the ones that will come to your rescue. So that is where you will draw the income from for your living. And God forbid, if anything unforeseen happens while you are living your dream life, how is the family going to manage? That is a critical question. We have seen during COVID, a lot of families have been impacted. There have been long illnesses, I mean, long issues related to COVID. There have been deaths of younger people, and there have been families who have seen a loss of jobs, I mean, for both the husband and the wife at the same time. So those situations have also arisen. So in that situation, what do you do? I mean, that is also a part of this money discussion that should happen. And how will my family be secure financially if I'm no longer around? And even if I'm around, how should I plan on transferring my wealth to the next generation? Because there are a lot of issues in that also, with our country having multiple set of laws in terms of giving money to the next generation. It's based on gender. It's also based on the religion that you follow. It's based on whether you have interfaith marriages that have happened. So there are a lot of complications. So while you are alive, you also need to pay some attention to how you're going to transfer the wealth to your next generation. Can we move on, Amit?
Yeah, just before that, I would like to add one more point. And while Kiran talked about the laws as far as the intergenerational transfer is concerned, uh, while a legal system has complications, there are complications with respect to operational procedures also. Uh, Whether you look at a bank account or a demat account or a mutual fund or an insurance, and the procedures could be very, very different. Uh, Whether you are going to one particular bank or another bank, and there also there could be procedural differences. So this only keeps adding to the complications, and in such case again planning would be critical. Yeah, over to you, Kiran, back.
Yeah. So when we are talking about these kind of issues, definitely we come up with goals which are family goals. So when we spoke about buying a house, comparing it to how do you fund your children's education, you could have two children, you could have three children. So how do you balance out? You need all the goals are important for you. So how do you actually balance those out? So those are those concerns that arise when you discuss these kind of goals. So these are actually family goals. Also, apart from these typical family goals, if you look at a family structure, so it'll be your kids' education, buying your own house, maybe funding your own startup or your own retirement. These could be the typical goals. But apart from these, there could also be individual goals. Some people could dream of doing things like maybe becoming a trekker or a marathoner. So that is also an expense that needs to be taken care of. These are personal dreams and aspirations. Dr. Celso is running this foundation, so somebody could also be looking to engage more socially and give back to the society. So there also some kind of commitment of funds could be required. So these could be individual goals apart from the family goals, and that also form a part of the entire discussion when we talk about money. Amit, over to you.
Yeah, and that's where the first question when it comes to setting the goal is whether it is his goal or her goal or our goals, whether it is the parents' goals or the children's goals. Now, these are, Kiran, you gave some wonderful examples. Just look at one particular example, and if you are working somewhere and you want to start on your own, what do? Whose goal is it? So I'll share my personal experience. Around 14 years back, yeah, I quit the job, was working at a very senior position in a large multinational company. Uh, it's not so much about what I was doing, but that senior position and a multinational company meant steady, stable job, giving the whole family, my whole family, a comfort of receiving a monthly paycheck. That was a tremendous amount of mental peace. My wife takes care of the house, and we had we had then two kids in the school. Now, at that point in time, if you want to quit the job and venture into something where the income is completely uncertain, completely volatile, in the sense that some months the income is huge, some months I did not have work. Uh, so you go from steady income to uncertain income. While it was my dream to be on my own, but it impacted the whole family. Should I involve my wife in the discussion or not? This is one scenario. The second situation comes in where The goals may be individual or the family's goals, but then if both these spouses are working, should both contribute towards the goals, or only one person funds a certain goal and the other person funds another goal? Home loan in particular, these days, we see a lot of couples funding the initial payment or the down payment as well as taking a joint loan. But when it comes to a slightly smaller kind of expense, take for example, buying a vehicle, I'm sorry, buying a vehicle, then very often it is only one person who's spending the money for that vehicle, whereas the vehicle is going to be used for the whole family. Nothing wrong with that. But these are decisions that need to be discussed, because otherwise the danger is that the regular day-to-day expenses may go from one person, some of the larger expenses may go from one person's account, whereas the investments may go from somebody else's account. And to that extent, you are building assets in one person's name and not building enough assets in another person's name, simply creating some complication, or at least the possibility of some complication at some stage. And that is where discussions and contribution, if these things are clarified right in the beginning, it's always a great idea. But if these are not clarified right in the beginning, there's one beautiful line that Warren Buffett loves to say, and that actually he speaks in the context of investing, but it applies to the discussion that we are having and many other areas in life. He says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. He says that in context of investing, that the best time to invest was 20 years back. The next best time is today. So if you could not do it in the past, do it today. This discussion, for some reason, if you've not done in the past, well, Valentine's Day is a good occasion to have that conversation. One of our friends, the financial planner Gaurav Mashwala, he loves to tell his clients that at least once a year you go on a financial date. So the husband and wife go together somewhere, and then they sit together and discuss their family's financial matters together. I think that is something that can be considered. So with that, let's look at prioritizing the goals. Kiran, over to you.
So there are typically several goals that a family might have, and all seem to be equally important if you just look at them. So we were discussing some goals like children's education, or starting your own business, or going on a vacation. So these could be equally important. So how do you prioritize? So there wouldn't be enough resources to fund everything at the same time. So how do you actually go about doing this? So first thing, obviously, as Amit was talking about, the conversations. So the conversations need to happen between the spouse, and also I would say, going ahead, maybe involve dependent parents who might be staying with the family, and even children who would be impacted directly or indirectly with these kind of decisions. Uh, Prioritizing goals, simply I would say, is divided into two broad categories. One could be something that is sacrosanct. You will not for any reason, you will not want to compromise on those goals. So for each family, these could be different. I've had experiences where, people say that, okay, we will fund our children's graduation, but the post-graduation, they have to take care of themselves. There are other people who also say that we will fund the entire education, but the marriage, we will not be funding the expenses. They will have to manage on their own. So to each family, their own, thought process. So this needs to be discussed, because very often we also realize when we talk to clients that the couple hasn't spoken to each other about these kind of priorities that they might have individually. And when you actually bring up these topics, they think very differently. So it could also range, I mean, not only about education, it could also be about basic schooling. Now in India, we have so many choices, even in basic schooling. So you could go with the local board education, you could have ICSE, CBSE, you could have your IB or IGCSE. The costs are vastly different for each of these choices. So what does a parent want for his or her child? That is a discussion that should happen amongst the couple, and then it is easier to set the goal and actually go about finalizing that. So these could be certain sacrosanct goals. Okay, so whatever our situation, whatever decision in terms of our careers that we take, this is something that is very high priority to us, so we will take care of this first. There could be other goals which are important, but we can compromise on those goals if things don't permit, if resources don't permit for certain reasons. We will compromise. So maybe something like a vacation. So vacation abroad versus vacation in India. A number of times that you're going on a vacation, the kind of car that you're buying, the kind of house that you're living in, what size, what location. So that could be something that you are willing to compromise with. So as I said, to each family, something else could be important. I mean, it need not be the same across the board. So you prioritize your goals that will help you create focus in reaching towards those goals. Because if you list down 10 things and you're not focused, you will not reach anywhere. But if you focus 1, 2, 3, this is my priority, give resources to those goals first. And in case your income is increasing or you have any windfall or if you have any inheritance, the rest of the goals can also be included. Next. Amit, can we move on to the next slide, please? Things do go wrong. We can plan our lives beautifully, but life happens, and it is beyond us if things can sometimes not go the way we plan for. So there could be things that might go wrong in various areas of life. There could be something wrong in relationships. We have seen the rates of divorce going up in India. Now that is entirely a totally different discussion why this is happening. So some of the reasons that come up often are because women are more emancipated now. So earlier, women did not have a choice. I mean, even in a bad marriage, the woman had to stay put because there was no financial support, or parents were not willing to take her back. So she was always dependent on the male or in a family. Now with financial emancipation, probably it is a little easier. I mean, I would not say it is still easy for any person to walk out of a marriage, but things do go wrong. So how do we take care of these kind of things is when Amit was speaking about the conversation and the contribution towards the goals. Uh, a good practice in any couple when they are creating their assets is to create segregated assets from their own income. So if both the husband and wife are working, they will contribute equally to the family expenses. They will contribute equally to the long-term goals, and they will also create assets in their own names. Right. So this will create a very fair division of the amount of assets that are created. So in case, God forbid, if anything happens in the marriage going forward, uh, neither one of them, nor the husband, neither the husband nor the wife will be, left with nothing in hand. So that is one way of looking at it. Obviously, I mean, this is a much, much deeper conversation, but I will stop at this in this particular area. Now, career-wise also, we have seen this over the last 2 years where careers have been impacted due to COVID. Uh, People have lost their jobs, or there have been salary cuts, or even going ahead, now because there is so much automation, things are changing so fast in technology that there are a lot of careers which might be impacted. So where earlier people used to retire at 58 and 60, now the retirement age is coming earlier and earlier. So people are now being forced out of jobs at the age of 45 and 50, because the younger generation obviously will come in much cheaper. They become a high expense resource, the people who are at senior levels. So in that scenario, what do you do? Two things I would say. One is always have an emergency fund at hand. And second is that try and create your corpus as soon as you start working. So if you have not started saving and investing, do it and try to save the maximum amount that is possible for you, because you don't know how long your career is going to be. You will have to unlearn, you'll have to relearn, and you will have to do newer things, and that's going to be challenging. It's not an easy answer, but you have to be prepared for it. Health wise, again, simple things. Obviously take care of your health, that is first, because if you are not healthy, nothing else matters. I mean, even if you have ample amount of wealth, you'll not be able to enjoy it. Take care of your health. On the other hand, prepare for the worst. Take good amount of health insurance, so that if anything is impacted, at least your wealth is not eroded because of that scenario. So take good amount of health insurance. Many years back, we had just about 5 lakhs of health insurance available, because there was only public sector entities which used to give. But now you can go as high as 1 crore in health insurance cover. So that is available. So take benefit of that. When we talk about death, the income earner being no longer around to provide the family with, all the income that he or she earns, all the goals will be impacted. So daily living will be impacted, because if a certain lifestyle the family is used to, that might not be sustained if the income earner is no longer there. To protect those kind of scenarios, life insurance is mandatory for anybody who's earning, whether it's the husband or the spouse. And you need to ensure that you have a high amount of cover. It should not be a policy where you are investing and taking insurance at the same time, because such policies become very expensive. Look at pure term plans, which are cheaper and can give you a very high cover. And keep on revising your term plans each time there is a change in your life circumstances. So if you're a young couple and you have a child, you might want to revise your life insurance policy and see if you need anything more. If you take a loan, again, there is a responsibility on your head. If something happens, who will repay that loan? You don't want the family to lose the house in case you're not able to repay the loan. So in such scenarios, revise your requirement of your life insurance and take more if you need. Uh, Money frauds. People do get caught up in frauds. People do make mistakes in selecting products which might not be suitable to their overall life goals. So if there is something which you have erroneously taken, take a hit, book the loss, get out of it. If it is not suiting your overall portfolio, I mean, if it is not taking you in the direction that you really want to go, it get rid of it. I mean, it's okay to make mistakes, but you try and recover from that mistake in time. As far as frauds go, the basic, taking care of things, of not sharing your PIN, being careful with not opening unknown links, those are things which we are all aware of. So you need to be careful. And also, especially these days, what we are seeing is there are a lot of get rich quick kind of schemes which are coming in, because there is so much uncertainty and fear everywhere. So, just one caveat I would like to say is that if something seems too good to be true, it is likely that it is a fraud. So, stay away from such things. It takes time to create wealth. Someone who's promising you a doubling of money in 6 months or 8 months, it will not happen. So, just stay away from those kind of things. Amit, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Beautifully explained the importance of prioritizing the goals, as well as what if something goes wrong. Now, the key point out here is to have that conversation, have that discussion. But then there are certain issues. There are some cultural issues. There are some psychological issues. There are some myths and stereotypes that we've seen. Before we get into that, let's just step back on this slide and look at the conversations, the fraud that Kiran was mentioning. Just heard from somebody that one of that person's relatives was sold a particular kind of insurance policy by a seller over a cup of over a glass of soft drink and a bowl of cashew nuts. Now, it was put in such an ironic manner that when you are shelling out a few lakhs of rupees, you're more focused on that soft drink and cashew nuts and not trying to understand the features of the product. Now, these things do happen even as we speak. If the man of the house takes the decision, does the man have the courage to open up and confess to the wife that, okay, I messed up, I made a mistake, or vice versa? I mean, not only one side, but vice versa. And well, many of you are quite experienced, as Dr. Celso was talking about. Some of you who are present with more than a quarter of century of married life, you know that the husband and wife, irrespective of what the jokes say, we don't really keep fighting amongst ourselves. We want to live a good, happy life together, and we make mistakes and we accept, tolerate, and forgive. Now, this is something which we've seen, that fear of my wife getting to know that I made a mistake, or my husband getting to know that I made a mistake. This is also one of the psychological barriers where people do not want to discuss. What if I've taken a wrong decision and she gets to know or he gets to know? Well, it's okay. I mean, it's a domestic matter. One of the psychological issues. The other psychological issue with the other issue, which is cultural, which is often talked about, is that yeah, these decisions I only take care of. My wife is not interested, so she'll not even understand. Whereas the lady would say, don't involve me into that. I've already got my plate full. There's too much at hand. Why do you want to add something more on my shoulders? Let him handle that. No, let him handle that is fine. Getting involved or knowing that is important. Recently, and we talked about, Kiran talked about health insurance. Recently, there was a case where the person was hospitalized, had to be put in ICU. They had an insurance policy, a health insurance policy, but the wife did not know what to do about that policy, whom to talk to. Then the basic question is, what, for whom was the policy taken in the first place? If the insurance policy is not useful at that point in time, then it is as good as not taking the policy. In fact, worse than that, not taking a policy and then still spending the premium amount on something. I mean, wasting the premium amount. And this is where some of the cultural issues. My wife doesn't know how to evaluate a health insurance policy, and she does not need to know. But if something happens to me and I go into hospital, she knows where that policy is and whom to call up for the claim. At least that much is important. So what we've done, and I'm sharing it with you, which is something that we mentioned in the book also, and I think Dr. Celso also must be practicing the same thing. Kiran definitely does, I know for sure. So in my house, my wife, my daughter, and my son, apart from me, so all four of us know the full details of where all our investments are, what are the insurance policies that we all have, life, health, car, etc., whatever. And there is a list of people with their phone numbers. So in case of an emergency financial kind, whom to get in touch. And it is interesting. There are around 5 or 6 people to whom they can call up. And the interesting part is, if I've got a life insurance policy from one and mutual fund investment through somebody else, even if the first person gets a call, the person from whom I've got life insurance policy, that person would be able to help with mutual funds also. So this is something that as simple as that, what we've done at our home. But why do women not take interest in financial matters? And again, in family, friends, relatives, known circles, neighbors, etc., I've come across a lot of women who say, this is too much of mathematics and I don't understand mathematics. So one of the movies, that Three Idiots, that principal's daughter was pregnant and she was carrying, and she said, if there is a girl, she'll become a doctor, and if there's a boy, he'll become an engineer. So it also talked about the stereotype that we carry culturally in the families, where the boy goes more towards the mathematical and engineering kind of line, and the girl is more about care and biology and medicine kind of route. It's a very bad stereotype. It's important to know that managing money is not rocket science. We don't need to understand complex mathematics. It can be done by people with some very basic understanding of the subject. I recently read a lovely story of housemaid of somebody. This was published on Twitter by somebody and posted on Twitter by somebody, and which I retweeted further. This lady is a household help, somehow she got an opportunity to understand the importance of saving and investing well. And she started slowly accumulating money and started buying small properties. And she then started giving those properties on rent. And out of that rental income, she started saving further. And over a period of maybe 10 or 12 years, she had, apart from her own house, she had 5 more properties given on rent. And the cash flow, rental income, was far more in excess of what she was earning through her household work. She still continued to work and doing the domestic work, but she could manage to create wealth for herself. Now, why is that example very important? Because here is an illiterate person. She simply understood certain small basic things, stayed within the limitations of whatever little she understood, and within that she created wealth. The point here is, it's not complex. The point here is, if women can't understand certain things, even men can't understand certain things. Very often, as a man, I can openly say that it's the male ego which comes in the way and say, oh, I understand investments. My experience of roughly 30 years in financial markets, and I've seen so many learned, highly educated, intelligent men who do not understand certain basics, who fall prey to the frauds that Kiran was talking about. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's human. Intelligence and money management may not have a one-to-one correlation. And that's an important point. Gender definitely has no correlation with the ability to manage money. Some stereotypes and myths prevail in the minds of people, cultures, societies. Those need to be broken.
So Amit, if I
Yes,
can just add
of
something to
course.
what you were saying. So when these conversations actually, not happen in families, I feel there is also this concept of, money being a taboo subject as such. So a lot of families, money is not discussed, and especially with women. I would only like to say that this needs to change, and it will gradually change. It becomes very important for the woman in the house to understand, because God forbid if something goes wrong in whatever manner, if she is not aware of what is there in the family as a wealth, she can be in a very bad situation. I mean, I have seen cases where the women got married at at a very young age, and her husband passed away at a very young age, and she had no awareness of where the money was, and she was finding it very difficult to raise her only child. So God forbid if something like this happens, and if the woman doesn't know, it will be a very sad situation. So even not getting totally involved, just being aware of what is there and where and who are the people who are involved, that itself will be a beginning step. And I think it's only not only about women trying to get this, it's also about the men changing the thought process, that get the woman of the house involved, and it is not your money, my money kind of fight that is happening. It's our money, and everybody needs to be aware of things.
Thanks, Kiran. Very useful inputs. Now, then the next question is, where do I pick up the knowledge from? Incidentally, the schools and colleges do not teach the subject of managing money. While the education empowers us to be able to earn, what do we do after that money is earned? That's not covered in any syllabus. And that remains, a situation where you got to swim, nobody teaches you swimming, and one fine day somebody suddenly pushes you into water. And that's the day when we actually start working, or we become independent. Independent in a different sense, not the financial independence that Dr. Celso was mentioning, but independent in terms of we are on our own, sort of. In such a case, where do we get that knowledge from? And this is where we thought it could be a good idea to come up with a book that addresses various concerns, various situations. Uh, we kept the women in mind while writing this book, and that's why it's called Perspectives for Women. But whether it is women or men, whether it is urban people or rural, whether it is middle class or rich, or whichever category that you want to look at, uh, we've tried to cover things which should be useful for everybody. But at the end of the day, we feel that if you teach a woman, you actually empower a whole family. And with that, we looked at this, creating this book. But then what we do is never enough. I mean, with two of us, we feel that you put in so much effort, but that also is not enough. So what we did was that towards the end of the book, we added an annexure called resources for to learn further. There are a few websites, names of a few newspapers, names of a good number of books. Those books that you mentioned in the resources are all written by Indian authors, and that was very deliberately done because we wanted somebody who understands the Indian context and writes for Indians, not somebody who writes for a different audience, and we are left on our own as readers to figure out what do we want to do. The whole idea of money, and this is something that I was talking to Dr. Celso also earlier, that we wanted to put in this session. Money often is considered in many discussions as the end in itself. So somehow I feel even people like us who go and talk, we talk about financial goals. Well, that financial goal and money are two slightly different things. The financial goal is derived from what you want to do in your life, achieve in your life. It's all about living a life of your choice. Then those events, those ideas, those specific situations, that kind of life has to be translated in terms of time horizon, when is it due and for how long, and stuff like that, as well as the amount of money that is required. And the moment you put that time and money together, that's called financial goal. We probably oversold that idea of financial goals, and somehow the purpose of that financial goal by itself is not the purpose. The purpose of that financial goal is to lead a life of one's choice. So to that extent, money which is involved in that financial goal or achieving the financial goal is the means to an end called the life of your choice. And the life of your choice could be, you may want to work till you are 90. That's perfectly fine. You may want to work and earn. You may want to work and do charity. You may want to simply give away your time for the societal betterment, or you may want to simply travel the world or do whatever, pursue certain hobbies. You've got many examples of people do that. What is right and what is wrong is not important. What is my choice is important for me, and what is your choice is important for you. And for that purpose, money plays a role. Money is important. Money is required in that context. And with that, let's invite Kiran again to talk about some of the situations, largely in terms of psychology, as well as that particular situation involving women. Kiran.
Well, when we talk about homemakers, they don't really earn any money, So working at home is something that is not a paid job. So are they insecure about money? So let us look at it from two angles. So one, where if you look at our maybe parents and especially our grandparents. So our grandparents, our grandmoms never used to work. They were not in a corporate job or they didn't have income of their own in most families. But they were never insecure. I mean, we don't remember them ever being insecure about how they're going to manage their old age or other things like that that we worry about today. So one, because probably the family structures were much stronger then. And as I initially discussed, that there was not really any choice. You get married, you live into a family, and that is it. I mean, there is no other way out of it later. But now things are changing. The world is changing. The other angle that I want to talk about is, uh, just because you have money, you're earning money, do you really feel secure? I don't think so. So it's not about being a homemaker or being, somebody who's working in the corporate world and earning their own money. I feel security really comes from the mind, about knowing that you will be able to manage in any situation. So whether you are a woman who has a corporate job or somebody who's a homemaker. So if you are okay with the idea that if I have to manage alone, I will be okay. That is what security is. It is not about what is there in your bank account. So that security probably will come from knowing things. First of all, how to handle things if things go wrong, how to take help from people when you are in such a situation where you need outside help, where you don't understand things, and being sure that whatever the situation is, I will be able to manage. I mean, I will be able to lead a comfortable life. I will be able to take care of my family, my children, and I will be able to enjoy life. I mean, the emotional aspect apart, I mean, if something goes wrong in a marriage, the emotional aspect apart, the money part is taken care of. So I think if that readiness is there, that insecurity will disappear. So I think it is more from the mind rather than being in a corporate job or not. Can we move on to the next one? So I have come across a lot of cases where, people are earning very well. Both the couple are very highly placed and they're earning a lot of money, and they spend also equally well. But there is somewhere this guilt in the mind. Am I right in spending this money? Do I deserve this? So I think where it comes from is that most of us have grown up in an India where there wasn't abundance. We have grown up in area where we typically came from very limited resource families, or we were typical middle class people where there was emphasis on education and there was emphasis on saving and being very frugal. That is the kind of India that we have grown up with. The kids who have maybe born after 2000 have seen a life of abundance. So probably they will not have that guilt in spending. So, buying a Starbucks coffee of 300 bucks, for me, it still is, that thing, oh my God, I'm spending 300 bucks on a cup of coffee. Even though I know I can afford it very well. But for my daughter who's 18, that there is no guilt factor in that spending, because she's not seen the life of frugality that we have come from. So that guilt factor comes from where we were born and how we were brought up. And how do we actually get rid of that guilt, and how do we enjoy that spending that we are doing with our money? I feel is all about knowing that we have taken care of things that really need to be taken care of. That is our life goals. So whatever our responsibilities are, whether we are saving for educating our children or buying a house or our own retirement. So if we are saving and investing enough for those, then whatever we are spending, we can totally enjoy it guilt free. So that clarity comes in once you have a financial plan in place. So if a financial plan is there, the overall picture. It's not just about an investment of whatever SIPs you're doing or things like that. The overall picture that, okay, I am all right. I have saved enough. I mean, I'm going to be creating a good corpus and I will be in a good position. So I can spend guilt free. So I think that is also an important aspect to understand, that wealth should bring you joy. It should not bring you guilt and stress. Amit, over to you.
Yeah. So, just continuing from where Kiran was mentioning, and this guilt may come irrespective of the a lady earning or not earning. And we've seen both the cases. So, homemaker may feel, oh, somebody else is earning, it's his money. And how can I spend on my needs? Or in a larger family, when both are working, so let's say if parents are there to be old parents are to be taken care of, then again somebody may feel, and it's irrespective of the gender, one may feel that, okay, my parents are at home and how can I go out and spend money on lavish restaurant meals when they are eating some homely cooked home cooked food. So it goes to a bit multiple kind of situations. But the flip side of that is the feeling of financial freedom to spend, leading to what another new term which has been coined of late is called the urban broke. Living in a city, spending lavishly, assuming that the large income or large inflow which we are receiving would continue forever. And these days, borrowing is also become reasonably easy compared to what it was 30 years back. In such a case, one may end up into situation where there's no saving or extremely small savings, and that could be the other side of it. The movie Spider-Man said, in the movie, Spider-Man says that with great power comes great responsibility. I think it can be applied to freedom as well. I mean, if you're financially free, it's only possible if you're financially responsible. And that's where how much to spend on what often is the first step in the subject of financial planning, where you draw down the budget. And that budgeting exercise is seen by a lot of people as a painful exercise. How can I track each and every expense? On the other hand, there are apps being developed which track each and every expense. The point is not about tracking each and every expense. The point is, like, you go to a restaurant and when you want to order food, you get a menu card. The menu contains a list of items that you can order. But what do you order? You only order a few items that you need. Treat your budgeting exercise like that. There is a whole list of things that you can buy and you may want to buy. But what do you need out of those things? And the word need is not just about frugality. Each person decides the need. Now, take for example, it actually happened with me, and I was shocked at that point in time. I was talking to one of my neighbors who is a shop owner, and I was just generally asking about house business. So he said, no, the business is not good, and people are not paying their dues on time. So if I've given some stuff to somebody on credit for 6-8 months, I don't receive the money. Earlier, I used to get it in less than 2 months. So today, 6-8 months, and after that also I have to follow up, and I still have to wait. So I just, trying to make it lighter, I said, yeah, but then people don't mind spending lavishly on weddings. So he said, yeah, that's true. I mean, people don't mind spending on the necessities, but the not so important items, they don't really pay money. So that was a shock to me. If I owe money to somebody, that according to me is a far more important thing than doing a lavish wedding. That's my cultural upbringing. That's my way of thinking. His way of thinking was different. And suddenly I realized, who am I to decide what is right for him or wrong for him? The same thing applies when it comes to the need. Do I need a car for my local commute? If yes, should I go for a small sized car, a sedan, an SUV, or a luxury car? Well, I'm nobody to judge, take that decision on behalf of somebody. But whoever is taking that decision, eventually, let's again come back to the whole subject of financial planning or money management. The entire subject is only about spending. And I know what I'm saying. It's only about spending. You spend some money right now for your immediate needs, or you save money for a future financial goal, and that financial goal is also about spending money. And beyond that, You leave money for the next generation so that they can spend. Eventually, should I spend now or save now is a decision between should I spend today or should I spend tomorrow? How much can I spend now and how much can I spend tomorrow? So if it's only about spending with a time gap in between, who decides whether I want a happy life now and sad life tomorrow, or a sad life now and happy life tomorrow, or a happy life today and happy life tomorrow? That's where responsibility comes in. So spending without guilt and spending without going broke are actually two sides of the same coin. And that's where the responsibility part comes in. Kiran, over to you on sabbatical.
Yes, so there is, this growing thing about sabbaticals these days. So I will just tell for those people who are not aware what a sabbatical is. It is basically a break from employment. So it's an extended leave kind of a thing where you are still on rolls of the company, but you might not get a salary for a certain period of time. So some corporate employers do have this sabbatical policy in place. So they allow the employees to take a break for whatever reason. I mean, it could be difficulty in the family in terms of someone being ill and needs to be taken care of, or it could just be for a refreshing break. So a lot of people undergo very difficult times because they've been working continuously and there's a burnout kind of a situation. So to get out from that, just take a break of maybe 6 months or so and come back. Some people want to pursue certain educational courses which need a break from the job, so they could come back better skilled at their job. So companies do give that kind of sabbatical. So sabbatical and financial independence, I feel, go hand in hand. Because what happens is usually once you're used to a certain kind of lifestyle and certain amount of income coming into your account every month, and you are on a break and that income stops, you will not feel good about it. So unless you're prepared for it, it will be a difficult time. So what I recommend, especially to women, because in case of women, there are a lot of situations which arise, and culturally we are in a place where women take more breaks in career than men do. So one obvious reason is a maternity break, which could be prolonged. While India has this regulation of 6 months of maternity leave, in certain cases women would like to take a longer break. So there could be an extended break from income. Or when there is a family member who needs help due to some medical situations, it's usually the woman who takes a break. Because again, gender stereotyping, women do get paid less than men in corporate roles as well. So in such situations, it's always better to create a kitty which you can dip into during such shorter phases where you will not have an income coming in from your salary. So I think that becomes extremely important for women, especially. Also for men who would want to maybe take a break for whatever reason. I mean, I mentioned some of the reasons earlier in this discussion. Amit, over to you.
Sure, Kiran, thanks. And that again brings us back to the money discussion. We talked about the importance of money discussions. We also talked about some of the cultural, psychological issues that come in the way of this discussion. So the first and foremost thing for couples to understand is the way each one has grown up. Now, let's say between me and my wife, we've been married for 24 years. So we know each other reasonably well. Incidentally, a large part of our life we've lived together when it comes to managing money. Whatever has happened prior to that may have a slightly lesser impact. But if you are young, you're starting your life together, it's important to understand what kind of family one has grown up in, what kind of culture that one has grown up in. There's nothing right or wrong out here. It's all about understanding and accepting, because otherwise there could be potential friction. To give you an example, recently, not very recently, meaning around 4 years back, a friend of mine who's almost is closer to 60 years, he decided to move to a different place. He and his wife live in Bombay. Son also lives in Bombay, but after marriage, he took a separate house and settled. So this friend of mine decided to move to a smaller, quieter place. He was not very happy with the rush of Mumbai. He said, now that I'm about to retire, I want to move somewhere else. But his wife wanted to work. She continues to work. And so he moved around a year and a half back to a smaller location near Bombay. His wife continues to live in Mumbai. But both have sort of long distance marriage. They keep traveling, meeting, spending time with each other, but they've decided to live the life that way. Somebody may argue that, okay, I mean, what kind of life is it? But it's their life and both are happy. Having that discussion and having the maturity to accept is what was important. And for that background and taking care that friction does not disrupt. While friction may happen, it does not really disrupt the family life, becomes very important. I elaborated in detail about sharing the family financial life. I mentioned about the investment insurance as well as phone numbers of people. The other thing in today's world is a lot of things are happening digitally. Do you want to share your password with your spouse? So wherever there are password protected files or there are passwords for various accessing various accounts, do you want to share with your family members? And these are again important part of the discussions that you need to have. First of all, in order to take care of this issue, accept that any two people are different. We adjust. There will be a little bit of discomfort, friction that's bound to happen. And many of us who lived that life for long, we know that there is a friction. In fact, there's friction between siblings, there's friction between parents and children. So that's unavoidable. And with that comes the, so should I say, maturity to accept each other as we are, rather than putting that judgmental cap. Kiran, you would like to add anything on that? Because awareness is your subject. Your book is also Mindful Retirement, the first book. So yeah, you can elaborate on this further.
Yeah, so I would only like to add a little bit on this is that we never really talk about these things, because we get so busy with life and the humdrum things, khane mein kya banana hai, and where do we go out, what movie do we watch. So those things happen, and after a longish married life, you kind of forget to discuss these important things. So just being aware of what the other person is feeling, talking it out becomes very important. So once you're aware, you will even in times where there are differences in viewpoints or in the way things are being handled, you are less likely to judge. I mean, if you're aware of where that person is coming from, why is my spouse behaving in a certain manner? Is it something that has happened in the past? What they have lived through as a family or as an individual, or what kind of thought process somebody has? So that could be very different between couples, and it gradually, as you continue on these discussions, you will start understanding each other, and that also forms a very strong backbone of the marriage. Because what I've heard from various sources is that money is one of the biggest reasons for a marriage going sour. So if these issues are dealt with awareness, are dealt with maturity, there is no judgment in those, you can avoid these kind of situations, and there will be no bitterness then. Even if there are differences, there will not be bitterness.
Great. So let's spend very a little time on a few important angles as far as knowing the money is concerned, and let's start with the four pillars of money. Assets are what we own, and those assets can be divided into two categories. One is where we consume stuff. So let's say the house that I live in is my asset, but I mean, I own that house, I live in that house, but it is for consumption purposes. It's for the purpose of living in it. But my mutual fund portfolio, which is also an asset, is an investment asset where I expect some return in the future, or my fixed deposit where I get interest, that's my investment. But if I take a second property and give it out on rent,
ये diabetes आहे आता after dinner ते after breakfast because pressure
if I take second property and give it out on rent, that becomes my investment asset. The distinguish, between the two, and that's that important because I can't mix between the two. If I do something with my consumption item, my lifestyle may get compromised. Number two, assets, investment assets can generate income in future in form of capital gains, interest, dividend, rent, whatever way, whatever name you want to give, but you are expecting that. On the other end, liabilities are what you owe, and these liabilities result into outflows into future in the future, where you got to pay back in form of EMI or interest or the return of principal. But liability is a must, where the future outflows are a must. Assets, investments, where the income may be, right? So that's the investment risk part, the uncertainty part, that's important to understand. And if that's the case, certain decisions that you can take only based on this particular understanding. Then, and let's again go back to my own example of quitting the job. The moment I decided to quit the job, so as I said earlier, I was getting shifting from a high, certain, regular income to uncertain, unpredictable, irregular income. In such a case, my assets, my investments cannot be highly volatile. My expense structure also should come down. So what I'd done was, at that point in time, before quitting the job, I sold my equity portfolio, paid off my home loan. So my EMI burden came down from whatever large amount to zero. My equity portfolio was used up for that. So after I quit the job, even when the interest rates went up and the equity markets came down, I did not have to worry about the next meal, because those two problems were already adjusted, and I was in a much more comfortable, low expense structure situation. So if you simply look at the interplay between these, it becomes very clear as to what kind of decisions that one can take. Income in two forms. One is we earn through working, active income. The other is where we need not work and still we can earn, which is the passive income, which comes from the investments. But as I mentioned earlier, investment income is uncertain. Active income forms a larger part of our income almost throughout the life, whereas we build that portfolio over a period of time, and if we work really hard at it, then the passive income coming from investments can be far in excess of the active income, which is nothing but achieving financial freedom. But at any point in time, if the income is more than the expenses, then only we are able to save and create assets. If the income is less than the expenses, then either we create liabilities where we have to borrow money and pay somewhere, or we have to sell our assets. Which are the expenses that we can control? And that's where all the expenses need to be divided into two categories. One is called the mandatory expenses. We can't do anything about it. And the other are the discretionary expenses, where we can use our discretion and do something. Let's take an example. A few years back, a friend had come to meet. I mean, we met over dinner, families, and during the discussion, it just turned out we just digressed on the money matters. Now that guy, at that point in time, this friend had a young daughter, 2.5 years old, and the small family, husband, wife, and daughter. The guy was working in a bank and he had very tough working hours. So almost on a daily basis, he would leave home before 8 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of times he would come in the middle of the night, or maybe 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the night. So basically, he had no time to spend with his daughter, especially on weekdays. So he felt guilty about it. And in order to compensate for the guilt, he would take his wife and daughter out for dinner every weekend. And when they went out, he loved fish, so they would eat fish. He also loved alcohol, so he would take it. I'm talking about 15 years back. Every weekend they would spend roughly between 3 to 5,000 rupees on that dinner. The salaries were not that high. I mean, I'm talking about 15 years back. And I said, what are you doing? I mean, how do you build your wealth? How will you build your assets if you're spending so much? So my simple suggestion was, while you may want to compensate for staying absent from the home, at least decide that 3 weekends you will go out, but 1 weekend you will spend at home only. Even if you are able to save that 3,000 rupees a month and invest it over a period of time, slowly and gradually, it will form a habit of saving and turn into a larger corpus. Discretionary expense. If we control, we can build assets. And the only thing that we can control really is the discretionary expense. But when it comes to the cultural upbringing, like Kiran gave a beautiful example of a Starbucks coffee, I feel guilty while buying that coffee. My son or daughter do not. When I mean, of course, the COVID times has reduced, but when I used to travel at the airport, I used to love having that coffee or tea. But when my father traveled, for those 4 or 5 hours, he would not touch anything. He would say, it's so costly, I can't afford it. Now, these are generation gaps. But just imagine the husband and the wife growing up in 2 different cultures. One has lived in frugality, the other has lived in abundance. And when they come together, what kind of friction can come when it comes to the discretionary expenses? Think about it, and that's where that friction is something that we were referring earlier also. While we talk about it, I'll very quickly go through this. Essentially, this is a very simple sort of cash flow of life, where your income comes from occupation, larger part. We talked about the active income. The passive income comes from investments, and both keep adding to that pool where things come in. Expenses are the regular day-to-day expenses, and then the difference between the two is saving, which again gets invested. These investments have to be for various financial goals, and we've talked at length about it. But the financial goals can be funded either through either through investments or through loans. But let's understand, investments may generate income, loans will generate expenses. It's this small diagram that actually tells a lot about how do you want to manage your finances such that it leads to a fulfilling life. After this, having led a fulfilling life, we need to pass it on to the next generation. And that's where I would request Kiran to highlight and talk about these 2 powerful instruments.
Thank you, Amit. See, what happens is there is a lot of misinformation that goes around when you talk about things like wills and nominations. What we need to understand is that transferring wealth to the next generation can happen in 2 broad ways. One is either you tell who will get what, or then the law will decide who will get what. So the first step is to put nominations for all kind of investments, whether it be your mutual fund investments or your house or your vehicle or even your insurance policies. Put nominations in place. it is important to note that nomination is only a means for the institution to pay the money to whoever is the nominee, but it does not mean that the nominee is the rightful owner. So if you nominate, say, your son in a particular investment, and you also have a daughter, so the daughter has a right to that money. So while the bank or the mutual fund will pay the money after you to the person who's nominated, if the other person requires, I mean, if the daughter wants, she can sue the son actually to get her share. So you understand that nominee is only a trustee of the money. He or she is not the legal owner of the money, except in certain cases, like in insurance. Now there has been a change in the rules where the nominee, if it is a spouse or a child, becomes the ultimate beneficiary. In other cases, in say bank fixed deposits or mutual funds, that is not the case. Now then, how do you take care of things? You ensure that, you know, after you, people will get the money properly. Write a will. That is the simplest way. So writing a will means you are telling that who will get what part of my wealth. And that is very clearly described in a will document. Now, if a will is not written, the law has in very detail mentioned as to who will get what. So if you are a Hindu, if you are a Muslim, or if you are a Christian or a Parsi or a Jew, there are separate regulations of how the wealth will pass if there is no will. Again, there are differences between how a wealth of a man will pass to his next generation, and it is different for the women. So it gets very complicated if there is no will for the rightful heirs to claim the money. So it is better that you write the will. The details of all these rules and regulations we have mentioned quite a bit in the book. So if you're interested, you can go through that in the book. We have given quite a bit in detail. And that should help you get some clarity. And it gets even more complicated if there are interfaith marriages, you know. So if a Hindu marrying a Muslim, or a Christian, or a Hindu and a Christian marrying, so it gets very complicated because there are two different set of laws which are applicable. So how do you go about it? So it starts right from what section your marriage is registered under. So that also becomes important in claiming from there. So I think a little attention needs to be paid to these things. Yeah, Amit, next one. Just a simple 2-minute thing on this slide. So how do you prepare your finances to lead a comfortable life? 4 steps. 1, look at liquidity. So you should have money when you want it. You cannot park money in a PPF account and expect it to pay for your child's school every year. So liquidity is important. Risk management becomes extremely important, because if things go wrong, you will have to dip into your wealth which you have created for your long-term goals, and you will lose out on that. So suppose you're building up a mutual fund portfolio and you have not taken health insurance, and there is an incident which requires high expense on hospitalization. So you will have to dip into the mutual fund corpus to pay for the hospital bills. So instead of that, take care of the risk management first and then start investing. So have your health insurance, your life insurance, your personal accident policy all in place before you start putting money into your SIPs. So then after risk management comes funding for your goals. So whether it be your life goals, if you are a young family, you will have life goals. For elder families, there could also be charity. It's not that younger people cannot do charity, but it is usually the way that we are always, short of resources vis-a-vis the goals that we have in life. So it is more likely that the more you age, the more wealth you will create, and then the charity goal will come into picture. And then, as we mentioned, the nominations are the first step in wealth transfer, and creating a will is an extremely important step in transferring the wealth to your next generation, so that whatever you have worked hard throughout your life to provide for your family, it goes smoothly to whoever is supposed to own it. That's all. Thank you.
So eventually, it's important to remember something that I mentioned earlier also. It's not really about money, though it's called money management, but the purpose of money management is where it all starts. So keep in mind the people come first. Our life comes first. The family members' lives come first. Then come the planning part or the planning process, and products come in the end. in a lot of cases, the discussions start with the products. What should I buy? Where should I invest? Which insurance policy is good? Which loan is good? Now, which loan is good? There is no standard answer. And today in the virtual world, it's become even more weird that some YouTuber would come and say, this is good and this is bad, and buy this or avoid that, etc., etc., without regard to understanding. Let's say if I'm going on a vacation, if I'm going to Goa for a vacation, I need a different set of clothes. And if I'm going to Himalayas, I'll need a different set of clothes. I can't say that, okay, this is an ideal dress for a vacation. There's no such thing. It's always dependent on what kind of person you are and what do you want to achieve. So if I want to go to Goa on a beach, I can't carry woolen jackets and mufflers and those caps. Doesn't really help. And that's where it has to start with people. What kind of life that you want to live? Plan for it. Products have to be fit in for the purpose which we started with. With that, we end the discussion. I know it's been almost 90 minutes that we've spoken. I hope the points were useful. The contact details are available in case anybody wants to talk to us. But I think with the presence of Dr. Celso Fernandez, anyway, you have a fantastic guide who can help you. So with that, thank you once again. Thank you, Dr. Celso Fernandez, and you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It was a fantastic session. In fact, I was listening each and every word out of it, and I've learned quite a bit from it. And I would like, so if you have still not sent me on my WhatsApp number, your names, your full names, even those who are attended even single, they are eligible. But main is at least one partner has attended this program. So you need to WhatsApp your full names, both the names along with your date of marriage, including the year, and let it come to my number. And I'm very happy to inform that as of now,
sorry to interrupt. You said married couples, but you all in the beginning you said to be married couples also are eligible.
Even those who are to be married, which are getting married now, because we have already got 28 entries already. 28 people have shared. Even there are out of them 3 who are going to get married very soon. So they have already shared their this. So if anybody has missed out, like even now, if suppose by chance there is someone who is a widow, no problem. You can share your date of marriage and still we'll be giving you that book. So its main thing is your participation for this program. So what is more valuable is participation and learning and picking up ideas from some experts. So this is the actual incentive for participating, and this will be given at the function which we'll be having on the 27th as well as the 1st. 27th, of course, I said it's in Margam for the South Goa people. So people from Vasco and Ponda can choose which destination you want, whether you want to come to Panjim or Margam, because you all are in the middle. So if you want to join us at Margam, we will call you at Margam on Saturday, on Sunday it is, and then on Tuesday it is at Panjim. Now, just to end up, of course, the topic was very good. So I just said before we end, I'll take another 2 minutes. Just 2 very, very important points in addition to what Mrs. Kiran as well as Amit has shared. Now, as far as Mrs. Kiran has shared was regarding having a proper insurance plan. Now, what I would suggest is, like, we have got formulas now wherein even all your insurance plans can be actually made free of cost through SIPs. SIPs can make your insurances, like especially your Mediclaim as well as your term insurance, totally free. So much so that you can even get your money back immediately. And plus, after 5 or 6 years, your SIP can pay for it. So if you link your insurance plans to an SIP, it makes it almost free of cost. You have to take it. So if you're having any insurance policies which are still becoming like liabilities to pay as far as premium is concerned, you can attach it to your SIP, and SIP can actually pay for it through the systemic withdrawal plan. So you can have almost like a free insurance, but ensure that all of y'all are adequately insured, whether it is Mediclaim or whether it's a term insurance. You have to be adequately insured, because just recently, about a week back, I had one of the clients who lost her husband, and husband was just 48 years of age. And the only insurance he had was one LIC policy of 3 lakh rupees. With 3 lakh rupees, I don't know what she'll be able to do and how she'll be able to cope up with the expenses, especially of the 2 children. And not having insurance is actually one of the biggest mistakes which people are actually committing now. And the second most important thing which I wanted to stress on today is the only thing in what Amit Trivedi showed his slide, the only thing for which you cannot get a loan is basically your retirement. So retirement today is very, very important, and you have to enjoy it, because now the retirement phase is actually many years. Like even if a person gets retired at the age of 60, he has to think about the next 20 years or 25 years. From where is that money going to come? And you can't take loans for it. So loan is not available for retirement. So planning for retirement is more crucial than anything else. So please try and see to it. And what we have done a study as far as retirement is concerned, people who retire by 55 usually live beyond 75. And people who have to work for money beyond 60 usually don't live beyond 65. So this is done by the WHO. So if in case you want to live long, you need to retire early. Earlier, the retirement doesn't mean to say you stop working, but main thing is you should get a pension, because they always say if there's a pension, there is no tension. So if you want that to happen, you should start getting that pension. And what I find is the best age to retire is 50, and then enjoy 30 long years with a stress-free life. So for that, start planning your finances early. It's not difficult. In fact, I've written a book on how to retire at 40, and that is very, very easy. And let me tell you, anybody can grow rich in India. Growing rich in India is not difficult at all. Anybody can do it, provided you follow the rules that the rich follow. If you think like the rich and you act like the rich, who said you'll not grow rich? It's very easy. So once again, a very big thank you to each and every one of you, and a special thanks to both us guest speakers, Amit as well as Kiran, because both of you have shared your valuable knowledge, and more than that is your valuable time. And all of us were very much eager, and I'm sure all of them have definitely enjoyed. And what I enjoyed is most of them have listened to this talk for the first time together. Many of them have attended our seminars. It's not that we have done many, many seminars, but this is for the first time that many of them have attended it together. I can vouch for it. If you want, I can even allow you to unmute your mics. If anybody wants to share, you can unmute your mic now and just tell me whether this is not the first time that you have attended it together.